At midnight, my daughter called me. Help! I was robbed and abandoned 120 miles from home. The shock hit me like a ton of bricks. After all the years I sacrificed for her, this was how she repaid me. But what she didn't know was, I had a secret that would change everything. I wasn't just going to rush to her rescue. I had a plan. Want to know what happened next? Hit that subscribe button, follow my story, and comment where you're watching from. You won't want to miss this. Subscribe now and leave your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story spreads. It was nearly midnight, and the quiet of the house wrapped around me like an old, familiar blanket. I sat alone in my living room, the soft hum of the television filling the silence. The house felt like it was shrinking, growing smaller with each passing hour. At 78, time seemed to move in a way I didn't quite understand anymore. The days dragged on, a blur of quiet routines and forgotten dreams. I was lost in a book, something light to distract my mind from the weight of the years. But the peace didn't last long. The shrill ring of the phone shattered the stillness. My heart skipped a beat, the sound of it too sharp in the otherwise peaceful room. I glanced at the clock. 12:03 a.m. Who would be calling at this hour? I answered, expecting to hear a wrong number or a telemarketer. But then her voice came through, shaky and frantic, and I felt the blood drain from my face. Dad, help. I was robbed and abandoned. I'm 120 miles from home. Rebecca, my daughter. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. There was a moment of silence between us, my mind racing to catch up, the weight of the past years of sacrifice, the countless times I'd dropped everything to help her, hit me like a ton of bricks. And yet, here she was again, in trouble, calling me like I was the only one she could turn to. How had it come to this? My heart clenched, but I couldn't let her hear the panic in my voice. I'll be there, Rebecca, I said, trying to keep my tone calm. Where are you? Near a diner just outside of town. Please, Dad. I don't know who else to call. I set the phone down and stared at it, feeling the weight of her words settle in my chest. How many times had I come to her rescue? Too many. I thought about the countless sacrifices I'd made over the years. Missed dinners, forgotten promises, the years of my life spent chasing after her and the others who always seemed to need something. Yet, it was never enough. It had never been enough. I stood up, grabbing my coat from the back of the chair. The motion was mechanical, the years catching up with my body. I felt the weight of my age in my knees, my back, but I couldn't stop now. Not after everything. I wasn't sure what I was more afraid of, the trip itself, or the sinking feeling that this was all becoming too familiar, too painful. I'll be there, I muttered to myself, as if saying it out loud would somehow make it easier. The words felt hollow. The house felt colder now, even though I hadn't turned on the heat. I paused for a moment, standing still in the doorway, looking out at the dark, empty street. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt so invisible to my own family, but tonight would be different. Tonight, I was going to find out if there was anything left for me to give, anything left for them to take. I grabbed my keys and stepped out into the cold night air, the chill biting at my skin. The car engine roared to life, and I pulled out of the driveway, the familiar streets blurring in the darkness. As I drove, I tried to make sense of it all. Why did it always have to be me? Why did Rebecca always come to me when everyone else had abandoned her? I wondered if, somewhere along the way, I'd become nothing more than a tool for them to use when things went wrong. The road stretched out before me, lonely and endless. As I drove in the dead of night, I couldn't help but think about the past, the years I'd spent raising my children, trying to do right by them. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like I'd only ever been an afterthought to them. The wind howled outside the car as I drove further into the night, the headlights cutting through the fog. My mind wandered back to the sacrifices I'd made over the years, those countless nights where I'd put my own life on hold to fix their problems. But it never felt like enough. Rebecca never seemed to understand that. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I could hear her voice in my head. The same voice that had once been filled with love and gratitude but now felt empty, strained. I didn't know who else to call. The words echoed in my mind, mingling with the growing sense of frustration. Why did she only come to me when everything had fallen apart? I reached the outskirts of the town and could see the faint glow of the diner up ahead. A strange sense of finality settled over me, the kind of weight that only comes from knowing something significant is about to unfold. I wasn't sure what to expect when I saw her. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to know. But I had made my choice. I had to see it through. I parked the car and stepped out into the cold night, the silence pressing down on me. As I walked toward the diner, the dim light flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Rebecca was standing by the door, her figure outlined in the soft glow of the street lamp. She looked frazzled but unharmed. "Dad," she said, rushing toward me. I didn't know who else to call. I took a deep breath and forced myself to speak, though the words tasted bitter in my mouth. "Why is it always me when you need something?" I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "You can't just take from me." She hesitated, her face twisting with guilt and defensiveness. "I didn't mean for this to happen." I shook my head, a quiet, painful laugh escaping my lips. "It's always the same, Rebecca, always." But despite the bitterness, despite the frustration, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't walk away from her now, no matter how much I wished I could. "I'll take you back," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But it can't keep going on like this." The cold night air surrounded us as I helped her into the car, the weight of everything hanging heavy between us. My internal battle wasn't over yet. The silence in the car felt suffocating, but I didn't know what else to say. As we drove off into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The road ahead was long, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what awaited us. But I was here, and that was all I could offer. The road stretched out before me, dark and quiet. As the car rolled down the highway, the headlights cut through the night, but the silence in the car was deafening. I glanced over at Rebecca, who sat in the passenger seat, her face a mixture of exhaustion and fear. But the fear didn't seem real. It felt more like a familiar game she played, a pattern I had grown accustomed to. I had been down this road too many times. When we had pulled up to the diner, I saw her standing by the flickering streetlight, looking lost, but not physically harmed. There was no visible injury, but there was a hurt in her eyes I had seen before. It was the same hurt I had felt over the years, and it didn't feel like the same daughter who once looked to me for comfort and guidance. I had tried to stay calm when she first spoke to me. The words, "Dad, I don't know who else to call," hit me like a stone in the gut. A familiar feeling of betrayal began to bubble up. "You should have thought about that before you decided to distance yourself from me," I'd said coldly. My voice had betrayed me, sounding colder than I had intended. But I couldn't help it. Every time she needed something, it was me who dropped everything to help. And yet, I had no idea where she had been all this time, or why she hadn't thought to reach out sooner. The drive back was even worse than I had imagined. The silence between us was thick, as though neither of us knew how to start the conversation that should have happened years ago. Every mile that passed only made the distance between us seem greater. As we sat in the car, I could feel my anger rising, but it was mixed with something deeper, a sense of regret, and maybe even a hint of hopelessness. "I've done so much for you," I thought, my mind wandering back to the years of sacrifice. All those nights I stayed up late, those overtime hours I worked just to provide. And this is what I get in return? The bitterness seeped into my thoughts, and I felt a swell of resentment toward my own daughter. But even in the midst of that resentment, I knew I couldn't turn my back on her. It was too late for that. The years of my life, the sacrifices I'd made, had built a bond that couldn't be severed easily. Yet, it was growing increasingly hard to ignore the realization that she saw me not as a father, but as someone who could always be relied upon to fix her mistakes. "Why now?" I asked quietly, my voice tinged with frustration. "Why me? Why do you always come to me when everything falls apart?" Rebecca looked away, as if the question had caught her off guard. I saw her fidget with her hands, trying to find the right words. "I didn't know who else to turn to," she said softly. "You're still my father. Still my father." I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her that being her father didn't mean I was always there to pick up the pieces of her broken life. But instead, I stayed quiet, the weight of the unspoken words sitting between us. I drove on, the steady rhythm of the car's tires against the asphalt almost soothing, if not for the growing tension. The miles stretched on, the quiet broken only by the occasional hum of the engine and the rustle of the wind. I glanced over at Rebecca again, but she was staring out the window, lost in her thoughts. I knew she was probably thinking about how I had once been the hero of her life. I had been the one to fix everything, to make things right, but not anymore. I wasn't sure when it happened, but I had stopped being the hero in her eyes and had become just another tool to use when things got tough. I pulled into the parking lot of our old neighborhood, the familiar sight of the houses passing by, each one a reminder of the years I'd spent trying to keep my family together. I parked the car in front of her apartment building, the engine quieting as I turned it off. "You're home," I said flatly. Rebecca didn't respond at first. She just stared at the building. I could tell she was reluctant to face whatever reality awaited her inside. I didn't wait for her to gather herself. I just opened the door and stepped out, heading toward the building without looking back. I had already made my decision. I would help her. I always did. But I was done being the fall guy, the one who was always expected to clean up the mess. Rebecca caught up with me at the door. She opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off. "I'll help you," I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "But don't expect me to be the safety net forever." We both stood there for a moment, neither of us knowing what to say next. The weight of the silence settled heavily between us. As I turned to leave, I felt an unspoken shift in our relationship. Something had changed. I wasn't sure if it was the years of my sacrifices or the weight of the bitterness I had built up over time. But I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer the hero in this story, and I wasn't sure if I ever would be again. I pulled the car into the driveway, the headlights casting a brief glow across the old, familiar house. The sound of the engine idling fills the silence between Rebecca and me. I glance over at her, her face still streaked with the remnants of tears. She's sitting there, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead. "Dad, I didn't know where else to go," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't answer right away. What is there to say? I've heard this all before. Her words hit me like they always do, empty, self-serving. After everything, she still doesn't understand. "You've made it pretty clear you don't need me," I finally reply, my tone cold, measured. The words come out easier than I thought they would, but that doesn't make them feel any less true. Her eyes flicker with something. Guilt, maybe? I can't be sure anymore. She's done enough to me over the years to make me doubt her sincerity. I can feel the anger rising inside me, but I swallow it down, hiding it behind a calm, distant expression. It's a fight I've fought 1,000 times. The weight of the past presses down on me, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the hours spent away from my own life, just trying to keep her and the rest of the family afloat. I remember when I used to see her smile and know that all my work meant something. Now it feels like she's taken every ounce of love and effort I gave her, chewed it up, and tossed it away. I open the car door and step out, the cold air hitting me like a slap. Rebecca follows suit, and we walk towards the front door in silence. Inside, the house feels colder than usual. I don't know why. Maybe it's the years of neglect. Maybe it's just that the place is too full of memories I'd rather forget. As I pass the hallway, I catch sight of the old photos hanging on the walls. There's one of Rebecca when she was a little girl, her face lit up with that carefree joy she used to have. I stop for a moment, my gaze lingering on the picture. It feels like a lifetime ago. Back then, I had hope. Back then, I thought I could fix everything. But now, all I can feel is the weight of my own disappointment. I look over at Rebecca, who is standing near the kitchen, her eyes not meeting mine. I can tell she wants to say something. Apologize. Maybe. But the words never come. Instead, She stands there, her hands clasped tightly together, her face etched with something I can't quite place. Fear? Regret? I can't stand it anymore. The silence is suffocating. Why now? I ask, my voice a little sharper than I intended. Why me? Why is it always me when you need something? Rebecca flinches, but she doesn't answer right away. She opens her mouth, but then closes it again, as if she doesn't know what to say. I didn't know who else to turn to, she finally murmurs, her voice barely above a whisper. You're still my father. The words are supposed to mean something, but they fall flat. I look at her, really look at her, and I realize something. She's never really seen me. Not for who I am, not for everything I've given her, not for the man I've become. She's always seen me as just a safety net to fall back on when she's in trouble. And I've let her. I rub my hands across my face, trying to stave off the anger, the hurt. But it's there, simmering beneath the surface. This isn't just about tonight. It's about everything that led up to this moment, the years of emotional neglect, the way she and Dylan have taken me for granted. You don't get it, do you? I say, my voice low, almost a growl. I've given everything for you, and all you've ever done is take. When does it end? Rebecca's eyes well up again, but this time, I don't soften. I can't. Not anymore. The silence stretches out between us, thick and uncomfortable. I feel the weight of it, but I can't shake it off. Not yet. I want to scream, to throw my hands up and walk out, but I know that would only make it worse. So instead, I force myself to breathe. But I turn away, heading to the kitchen. I can't look at her anymore. I can't pretend that everything is okay, but I'm not sure if I have the strength to fight this fight anymore. All I want is for her to see me, to see the man who has always been there for her, even when she didn't deserve it. I sit at the kitchen table, my hands folded in front of me. I don't want to deal with this. Not tonight. Not ever. But here we are. I hear her footsteps behind me, but I don't turn around. The sound of her hesitation fills the room, and for a moment, I almost wish she would just leave. It would be easier, but I know that's not how this works. She's my daughter, and despite everything, I still love her. We're going to talk about this, I say, the words escaping before I can stop them. But not tonight. Not like this. Rebecca says nothing. She stands there for a moment, then quietly walks away. I hear her footsteps retreating down the hallway, but I don't follow. I can't. And yet, I know, deep down, that this isn't over. The damage has been done. The walls are up now, and it's going to take more than just words to tear them down. I've been patient. I've been kind. But the truth is, I'm tired. Tired of being the one who always fixes things. Tired of being the one who always sacrifices. I've had enough. It's time to face the truth, whether Rebecca likes it or not. And that's when I realize I'm no longer the man I once was. I've changed. And maybe, just maybe, it's time for everything to change. The air in the house feels thick as I stand in the living room, staring at Rebecca. She's sitting on the couch, her hands nervously twisting in her lap. The dim lighting from the lamp beside me casts long shadows across her face, but I can still see the tension in her eyes. I'm done waiting, done pretending. I take a deep breath, gathering my words. Why now, Rebecca? My voice is colder than I want it to be, but it's too late to turn back. Why do you come to me only when it benefits you? She looks up, a mixture of defensiveness and guilt in her eyes. It's not like that, Dad, she says, her voice weak. I needed help. I shake my head. You've needed help all along. But where were you when I needed you? The words leave my mouth before I can stop them. But they're true. It feels like I've been the one left out, left behind, while she and Dylan have carried on with their lives as though I didn't matter. Rebecca bites her lip, struggling to find the right words, but nothing comes. Her silence speaks volumes, and I can feel the walls between us growing higher with every passing second. I look away, unable to meet her gaze. This is where it all begins. The quiet, unspoken truth is bubbling up, and for once, I can't ignore it. The years of feeling unseen, unimportant, are finally catching up with me. I walk into the kitchen, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the house. The silence that follows feels suffocating. I lean against the counter, my eyes resting on the empty chair where I used to sit with my family, before everything fell apart. The memories are sharp, like shards of glass, cutting into me. I think back to the countless nights I stayed up late, working overtime to provide for them. I think about the hours I spent making sure Rebecca and the others were taken care of. And now, it feels like none of that mattered. All those sacrifices, those late nights, the endless hours I spent, only to be met with silence. All these years, I've been giving, and what did I get in return? The thought runs through my mind, a quiet bitterness creeping in. I've given so much, but in the end, it feels like I'm invisible. I turn away from the kitchen and walk down the hallway, my hands shaking as I grip the doorframe of the living room. The weight of the years, the weight of my decisions, is pressing down on me. I've let them take me for granted. And that stops now. Rebecca finally joins me in the kitchen, her presence a quiet echo of the distance that's grown between us. I turn to face her, my voice steady but firm. I've done everything for you and Rebecca, and this is how you repay me? She opens her mouth to speak, but I raise a hand, silencing her. No, don't make excuses. I'm done listening. Her eyes well up with tears, but I can't bring myself to soften. The hurt is too much. The years of her neglect are too much. She's never once acknowledged what I've done for her, and it feels like I'm always the one left holding the pieces. I turn away from her, walking back into the living room. I can feel her gaze on my back, but I don't let it sway me. It's time for a change. Time for me to stop pretending. I head into the study, the room heavy with the scent of old paper and memories. The walls are lined with photographs, family photos, moments that once felt like proof of everything I had done for them, but now they feel like a reminder of everything I've lost. The doorbell rings, pulling me from my thoughts. I hesitate before walking to the door. When I open it, I'm met with the familiar face of Gregory Shaw, an old friend. His presence is a relief, though I know it's about to bring more complications. "Harold," Gregory says, stepping inside. "We need to talk." I close the door behind him and gesture to the living room. "What is it?" Gregory wastes no time. "It's Dylan," he says quietly, his voice low. "There's something you need to know about him." I sit down, my mind already racing. "What are you talking about?" Gregory hesitates for a moment, then drops the bombshell. "Dylan's been making moves behind your back, financial schemes. He's been using Rebecca to get what he wants." The words hit me like a slap. Dylan, my son-in-law, I've trusted him. I've trusted both of them. But now, everything feels like a lie. My hands tremble as I try to process it. I stand up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I knew something was off," I mutter. "But this is beyond anything I imagined." Gregory stands up as well, his expression serious. "You need to act fast, Harold. This is just the tip of the iceberg." I nod, my mind swirling with the information. I can't just sit here and let this happen. My family, the people I've sacrificed everything for, have been using me. But now, I know what I have to do. Later, I sit alone in my study, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The betrayal stings, but it also clears the fog in my mind. I've been living on their terms for too long. It's time to take control. I've been playing by their rules for too long, I think to myself, my fists clenched at my sides. It's time for me to set my own terms. The decision is made. I can't undo the past, but I can take control of my future. It's time to reclaim what's mine, my dignity, my legacy, and my peace. I stand up from the desk, my resolve hardening with each passing second. I know what I have to do. The battle isn't over, but the first step has been taken. I walk outside, the cool night air biting at my skin, the stars twinkle above me, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there's still light. I stand there, in the quiet of my backyard, looking up at the sky. The decision I've made is final. I'm no longer going to let my family control my life. The phone rings in my pocket, breaking the silence. I pull it out and check the caller ID. It's Rebecca. I hesitate for a moment before answering. "Hello," I say, my voice calm but firm. "Dad," she begins, but there's something in her voice that's different this time. I don't know what she's going to say, but I know one thing for sure. It's no longer about saving her. It's about saving myself. It's time to take control. Let them see who I really am. I mutter under my breath, the words resonating in the still night. The tension in the dining room is thick enough to cut through with a knife. I stand across from Rebecca, the evidence of her deceit heavy in my hands. Every word feels like it's been building for years, and now I can't hold back anymore. "You've taken everything I've given, Rebecca," I say, my voice strained but steady. "And you've left me with nothing but lies." Rebecca looks at me, shock and defensiveness mixing in her eyes. "I didn't mean for things to go this far. Please, I need you to understand," she pleads. "Understand what?" I can feel my anger building, each word like a nail in the coffin. "That you'd throw me away when I could no longer serve your purpose?" I wait for her to respond, but there's nothing left she can say. I'm done being the one who keeps giving and giving, only to be trampled on. She tries to justify herself, but it's too late. The curtain has been pulled back, and I can see everything for what it is. I can still hear the faint echoes of Rebecca's words in my head as I walk into my study. The weight of what's happening presses on me like a storm cloud, but I can't bring myself to look away. I sit down in my chair, the room dimly lit by the soft glow of the desk lamp. The silence feels louder than any argument ever could. I look around at the pictures on the walls, family moments, memories of a time when everything felt so simple. My mind flashes back to the years I spent sacrificing everything for my children. Late nights at work, helping Rebecca through school, paying for things I couldn't afford, all to make sure she had a better life. And for what? The question hangs in the air. For what? The years of sacrifices come rushing back, ignored by her, taken advantage of by Dylan. The realization hits me like a punch in the gut. I'd given them everything, but now I'm left with nothing. My dignity, my peace. It's all gone. Traded for their convenience. The truth is inescapable now, and as much as it hurts, I can't keep pretending anymore. I have to do something about it. The front porch creaks under my weight as I step outside. Dylan is standing there, looking as cocky as ever. The sunlight is dimming, leaving a cold chill in the air. I don't give him the satisfaction of a greeting. Instead, I get straight to the point. "I've seen your tricks, Dylan," I say, staring him down. "You thought I wouldn't catch on, but I did." He smirks, "But it doesn't faze me anymore. You're just upset. You don't understand the bigger picture," he says, trying to dismiss me. "Oh, I understand perfectly," I say, my voice cold as steel. "You've been using my daughter to steal what's mine. You've manipulated her, and me, long enough." His smirk falters, but he doesn't back down. Still, I see the cracks in his facade, the cracks I never noticed before. His game is over. I've exposed him, and there's no going back now. The living room feels even colder as I sit on the couch, the phone in my hand. I call Linda Green, my lawyer, to discuss the next steps. Her voice comes through, steady and calm, but there's an edge to it. "We have the leverage, Harold," she says, her words firm. "But we need to be strategic. This isn't going to be quick or easy." I nod, though she can't see me. I know she's right. This is just the beginning, and I can't afford to let my emotions take over. The battle ahead is going to be long, but at least now I have control. Now I know what I need to do. I need to know that I'm not alone in this. I say, my voice hardening. "Can we stop them?" "Of course. she reassures me. But we have to think this through. No mistakes. I hang up, the silence in the room pressing down on me. I don't know how far this will go, but I do know one thing. It's no longer about saving my family. It's about saving myself. I step outside again, the weight of everything still hanging heavily on me. The cold night air bites at my skin, but it helps clear my mind. I stare up at the stars, feeling small in the vastness of it all, but also strangely empowered. They can't take what's mine, I whisper to myself, determination flooding my veins. Not anymore. I will stand my ground. I take a deep breath, finding strength in the quiet of the night. It's the beginning of something new, something I should have done long ago. I can't let them destroy me. I've fought too hard to let it all go now. I turn back to the house, my resolve as firm as the ground beneath me. But as I step inside, the phone rings again, cutting through the silence. I glance at the screen. It's Rebecca. I hesitate for only a moment before answering. "Hello?" I say, keeping my voice steady, though I can feel my heart pounding in my chest. "Dad?" Rebecca's voice cracks. There's something in her tone, something different this time. I wait, wondering what she's going to say. I don't know if it's an apology or another plea for help, but I do know one thing. This time, I'm not the one who's going to fix everything. The road ahead may be uncertain, but one thing is clear. I'm done letting them control my life. It's time to take action. The house is quiet, too quiet, as I sit in my study, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The storm clouds gather outside, dark and brooding, matching the turmoil I feel inside. I glance down at the papers Linda Green gave me, the legal documents that will shape the next step in my fight. It's time. I pick up a family photo from the desk, my fingers brushing over the glass, the faces of my children, smiling, innocent. Those days feel so far away now. My sacrifices, my love, they're all reflected in the people I've spent years supporting. But now, all I feel is betrayal. I was their foundation, I think, staring at the photo, their safety net, and now they want to take everything away from me. The anger rises in my chest, a quiet storm of its own, but there's no turning back. I've made my decision. Tomorrow, I confront them. Tomorrow, this all ends. The door creaks open, and I don't need to look to know it's Rebecca. Her footsteps are hesitant as she walks into the living room. I turn to face her, my heart heavy with the conversation that's about to unfold. "How could you do this to me, Rebecca?" I say, my voice low but steady, controlled. "I spent my life giving you everything." She's taken aback, guilt flickering in her eyes. She's never had to face the consequences of her actions before. "Dad, I never meant for it to get this far," she says, her voice shaky. I thought it was the only way." I stand up, the chair scraping against the floor. "The only way?" My voice is sharp now, the words slipping out before I can stop them. "To destroy the very man who raised you?" Her eyes well with tears, but it's too late. The damage is done. I see it now, the years of manipulation, the way she's used me for her own gain. She tries to justify it, but I'm not listening anymore. I walk into my study, my head swimming with the weight of what's happened. I stand in front of the desk, trying to steady my breathing. The photos on the walls are a reminder of a time I can't get back. They haunt me now, the years I spent building a life for them, only to have it torn apart. I sit down and rub my temples, the anger rising again. I gave them everything, I think bitterly. My money, my time, my heart, and they left me with nothing. I think back to the nights I worked overtime, the sacrifices I made, the times I stayed up late helping them with their problems, and this is what I get in return. The realization hits me like a freight train. This isn't just about money or betrayal anymore. It's about something deeper. Rebecca and Dylan have crossed a line, and I can't let them keep walking all over me. Not anymore. The air is heavy when I step outside. Dylan's standing by the porch, looking as smug as ever, the cool night breeze brushing through his hair. He doesn't know what's coming. I walk up to him, my steps deliberate, and I see the flash of confusion in his eyes as I stop in front of him. "I've seen your tricks, Dylan," I say, my voice cold. "You thought I wouldn't catch on, but I did." He raises an eyebrow, his smirk never fading. "You're just upset," he says, brushing me off. "You don't understand the bigger picture." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I say, my voice thick with disdain. "You've been using my daughter to steal what's mine. You've manipulated her, and me, long enough." His eyes flicker for a moment, but he doesn't back down. Instead, he smirks. "You don't know what you're talking about. Harold, you're too old to understand." I don't flinch. "Don't play me for a fool." He scoffs, but I can see the cracks now. He knows his facade is slipping. The truth is out. I'm done being the one who's kept quiet, who's let them get away with everything. The game is over. Back inside, I sit at the kitchen table, my phone in hand. I dial Linda Green's number, my finger trembling slightly as I wait for her to pick up. "Harold," she says when she answers. "I've got the paperwork ready. We can take action whenever you're ready." I exhale, relieved to hear her calm voice. But beneath that relief, there's a cold realization. I've waited too long to act. I'm done waiting. "I need to know that I'm not alone in this," I say, my voice firm. "Can we stop them?" "We have the leverage, Harold," she says, her tone as assured as ever. "But we need to be strategic. This isn't going to be quick or easy." I nod, even though she can't see me. I've waited long enough. The line goes quiet for a moment. "We move forward tomorrow," she says. "I'll get everything in order." I step outside into the night again, the cool air biting at my skin. I look up at the sky, the stars shining above, and I take a deep breath. This isn't over. The fight is only just beginning. I think about everything that's led me to this point, the years of sacrifice, the heartbreak, and the betrayal. It's all built to this moment. They can't take away my dignity, I think, the words grounding me. Not anymore. I stand tall, the weight of the situation pressing down on me, but I know I'm ready. I'm ready to take control. I won't let them break me. I've fought too hard for too long to let it all go now. The decision has been made, and as I turn to head back into the house, my phone buzzes in my pocket. I check the screen. It's Gregory Shaw. I hesitate for a moment before answering. "Gregory?" His voice is urgent. "Harold, there's something you need to know. Something about Dylan." I look out over the yard, the night peaceful. Yet everything in my life is about to change. The battle for my dignity, my future, it's all ahead of me. Harold Finch sat in his study, the silence around him thick with the weight of the decision ahead. Outside, the sky was darkening, storm clouds gathering over the horizon, mirroring the tension within him. He stared at the papers on the desk, the legal documents that would either pave the way for justice or seal his defeat. This was the final confrontation, and Harold had no intention of backing down. His mind raced. What if he was too late to stop them? What if this wasn't just about the house, the inheritance, the money? Was there something more sinister at play? Rebecca and Dylan weren't just after his assets, they were after his life, his legacy, his very dignity. He picked up the phone, his fingers trembling slightly, and dialed Linda Green's number. As it rang, he reminded himself that he couldn't be passive anymore. He couldn't just sit back and let them destroy everything he'd worked for. When Linda answered, he didn't waste time. "I've been thinking. This goes deeper than I thought. I need to know what my options are. And I need to know fast. They're up to something bigger than I expected." Linda's voice was steady and calm, as always. "We'll move forward, Harold. The legal strategy is solid, but you need to be ready. This won't be easy, and it won't be quick." Harold's resolve hardened as he listened. "I won't sit back anymore. I'm taking them down." The confrontation had to happen. It was inevitable. Later that afternoon, Rebecca arrived at his home, her eyes red, her posture stiff with guilt. As she stepped into the living room, Harold stood, his anger simmering beneath the surface. This time, there would be no turning back. He looked at her coldly. How could you do this to me? Rebecca, I spent my life giving you everything. Rebecca hesitated, her voice quivering. Dad, I never meant for it to go this far. I thought it was the only way. The only way? Harold repeated, disbelief in his voice. To destroy the very man who raised you? She burst into tears, her face crumpling with regret, but Harold remained unmoved. You should have stopped this from the start, he said, his voice low and steady. You didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. Harold retreated to his study, seeking solitude to process the conversation. His mind wandered back to all the sacrifices he'd made for Rebecca, for the family. Each memory stung like a fresh wound. I gave them everything, my money, my time, my heart, and they left me with nothing, he thought bitterly, staring at the old family photos on the wall. His life had been built on the belief that family mattered above all, yet here he was, facing a betrayal so deep that it seemed insurmountable. As the sun began to set, Harold stepped outside to his front porch. Dylan was standing there, his face calm and unreadable. Harold's blood ran cold at the sight of him. This man, his son-in-law, was the mastermind behind it all. I see through your act, Dylan, Harold said, his voice sharp. This isn't just about Rebecca. It's about you getting what you think is yours. Dylan's smirk remained, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of nervousness. You're just upset. You don't understand the bigger picture. Harold stepped forward, his resolve unwavering. I understand perfectly. You've been using my daughter to steal what's mine. Dylan's face hardened, but Harold saw the cracks in his facade. The truth was out now. It wasn't about logic anymore. It was personal, and Harold wasn't going to let Dylan manipulate him any longer. That evening, Harold sat down with Linda in the living room, the weight of the upcoming battle settling heavily on his shoulders. He knew what he had to do, but the road ahead was uncertain. I won't let them destroy everything I've worked for, he said firmly, his voice full of determination. I'll fight until the end. Linda nodded, her tone supportive yet cautious. We have the evidence. Harold, the law is on your side, but we need to play this strategically. It won't be easy. Harold didn't flinch. He knew the fight ahead would be difficult, but he had no choice. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about justice, his dignity, his future. Later that night, Harold stood in front of his fireplace, the room quiet except for the crackling of the flames. He couldn't shake the feeling that something more was going on, something deeper than what he'd uncovered so far. His phone buzzed suddenly, breaking his train of thought. It was Gregory Shaw. Harold, Gregory's voice came through, tense and urgent. You need to be careful. There's someone behind Rebecca and Dylan, someone who's been pulling the strings from the shadows. They've got a backer, someone powerful enough to crush your legal efforts. Harold's heart sank. Who? Who's behind this? Gregory paused, his voice lowering. I can't say yet, but it's bad. They're not playing fair anymore. The revelation hit Harold like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just family betrayal anymore. He was facing an enemy with more power and influence than he ever imagined. Harold stood in his backyard, the night air cool against his skin. He looked up at the stars, his mind racing. He'd spent so long playing by their rules, so long letting them control him, but not anymore. He was taking control of his life, and no one, not even his own family, was going to take that away from him. They may have the power, Harold muttered to himself, but I have the truth, and I will use it. The decision had been made, the fight was on, and he was ready. As Harold stepped back inside, the phone rang again. He glanced at the screen. Another message from Gregory Shaw. Harold's pulse quickened. This was it. Everything was about to change. Harold sat at the head of the dining table, his fingers tapping the edge of the documents Linda had provided. The clock ticked loudly in the otherwise quiet room, each second growing heavier as he waited for Rebecca and Dylan to arrive. The weight of everything he had uncovered hung in the air, an air thick with betrayal and lies. His entire life had been about protecting his family, but now it felt as if they had set out to destroy everything he'd worked for. He could feel the storm inside him growing, but he would be ready. This was it. The final confrontation. He couldn't hold back any longer. If he was going to stand a chance, he had to face them directly. He had to outsmart them, expose their deceit, and reclaim the respect that was rightfully his. Rebecca and Dylan walked into the room, their faces betraying the anxiety they felt but trying hard to hide. They knew this conversation was coming, but nothing could prepare them for the truth that Harold was about to reveal. Harold stood, meeting their eyes with a cold resolve that neither of them had seen before. "I trusted you, Rebecca." Harold's voice was low, heavy with the weight of years of hurt. "But now, you've shown me who you really are. And Dylan, you thought you could pull the strings from behind the scenes. But now, it's my turn." Rebecca flinched, tears welling in her eyes. "Dad, please, I didn't know what to do. You have to understand." "Understand what?" Harold cut her off, his anger rising. "That you'd throw me away when I could no longer serve your purpose?" Dylan shifted uncomfortably, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "You're making a mistake. Harold." "We were trying to protect the family's future." Harold's eyes narrowed. "By stealing from it?" The air in the room felt electric, the truth out in the open, and the family dynamic shattered beyond repair. Rebecca's defenses crumbled as she tried to justify her actions. But Harold could see through every word, every excuse. The emotional rift between them was too wide now. Later, Harold retreated to his study. The weight of the confrontation still lingered, and as he sat in the quiet darkness of the room, he reflected on everything he had done for his family. He had given them everything, his time, his money, his love, and now, it seemed, they had taken it all for granted. "I gave them everything, my money, my time, my heart, and they left me with nothing," Harold thought bitterly, staring at the framed family photos on his desk. The life he had built, the sacrifices he had made, now felt like they had all been in vain. But now he knew what he had to do. He couldn't be passive any longer. The front door creaked open, and there stood Dylan, his confidence seemingly undisturbed by the confrontation earlier. Harold stood up, his frustration bubbling to the surface. The man who had manipulated his daughter was standing right in front of him, trying to act like nothing had happened. "I've seen the papers. Dylan, the will you forged, the bank statements you altered. You're done," Harold said coldly, his voice steady despite the rage that simmered inside him. Dylan tried to remain calm, but his smirk faltered slightly. "You don't understand. Harold, this was never about you or your money. It's about securing a future for us." "By stealing from me?" Harold's voice grew sharper. Dylan's eyes narrowed, but Harold could see the cracks in his armor. For the first time, he could tell that Dylan knew he was losing control. Later that evening, Harold sat in his living room with Linda Green, the lawyer who had been his ally through it all. She was laying out the plan for their next steps, and Harold listened carefully. The time had come to take action, and the legal battle ahead would determine everything. "I won't let them destroy everything I've worked for," Harold said firmly, his voice filled with determination. "I'll fight until the end." Linda nodded, the weight of the situation mirrored in her own eyes. "We have the evidence. Harold, the law is on your side, but you need to be ready. This is going to be a long, hard fight." Harold didn't hesitate. "I've waited long enough." The next morning, the courtroom awaited. Harold stood at the door, his hand resting on the handle, his mind racing. This wasn't just about property anymore. This was about reclaiming everything he had lost. His dignity, his respect, his future. "This is bigger than the house," Harold thought to himself, as he stepped out into the cool morning air. "This is about everything I've worked for. I won't let them take it from me. Not now. Not ever." As he entered the courtroom, the room felt alive with the tension of what was to come. The fight for his life, his legacy, was about to begin, and Harold was ready. In the courtroom, just when things were reaching their boiling point, a surprise witness stepped forward, Gregory Shaw, the old friend who had always been there for Harold. He had been silent up until now, but the time for secrets was over. "I've been holding on to this for a while, but Harold deserves the truth," Gregory said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. Dylan wasn't acting alone. Harold's heart skipped a beat. Who else is involved in this? He demanded, his voice rising in disbelief. Gregory hesitated for a moment, then dropped the bombshell. You'll find out soon enough, but it's time this ended. The courtroom erupted in chaos as the revelation spread like wildfire. Harold stood frozen for a moment, trying to process the magnitude of what Gregory had just revealed. There was more to this than he could have ever imagined, and the fight had just gotten a whole lot more complicated. The day came to an end, and Harold stood outside the courthouse, looking up at the sky. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Harold felt a sense of hope. He had made it this far, and he was ready for whatever came next. This is just the beginning, he muttered to himself. I'll fight. Not for what I've lost, but for what I deserve. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it, and his heart raced. It was an unknown number. When he answered, Gregory Shaw's voice came through. Harold, there's something else you need to know. And just like that, the story took another turn. The room felt eerily quiet as Harold sat alone, deep in thought. The trial had just concluded, and the weight of everything that had transpired over the past weeks seemed to hang over him. He could still hear the voices of Rebecca and Dylan, their words full of denial and deceit. But now, as he reflected on the outcome of the confrontation, he wasn't sure if it was the end of everything he had fought for, or just the beginning of something better. The thought of losing his family, of everything being torn apart, was painful. But Harold had always prided himself on doing the right thing, even when it hurt. Picking up the phone, his fingers trembled slightly as he dialed Gregory Shaw's number. Gregory had been with him through this whole mess, offering support when the world seemed to be crumbling. The phone rang a few times before Gregory's voice came through. Gregory, it's Harold. I need to know what's next. I'm not sure what I've done here. Harold, don't second-guess yourself, Gregory responded, his voice calm but firm. You've done what needed to be done. You're going to get through this. There was a pause before Gregory spoke again, and his next word sent a chill down Harold's spine. There's more you don't know, Harold. A second will, kept secret for years. Your daughter and Dylan thought they had it all, but there's something they missed. Harold's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Where is it? Gregory's voice was steady but urgent. I know where it is, and I'll get it for you. Harold stood up, his mind racing. The second will. This could change everything. The battle wasn't over yet. With the renewed hope that he might have the key to finally end this, Harold felt his resolve strengthen. Hours later, Harold sat in his study, still processing Gregory's revelation. The fact that a second will existed, a will his daughter and son-in-law had overlooked, was a game-changer, but it was more than that. It was proof that the people he had trusted most had been working behind his back, scheming to take everything from him. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. As he prepared for the final showdown, he called Linda Green, his lawyer, to strategize their next move. They needed to act fast. The pressure was mounting, but Harold knew that this was the last chance to reclaim his life and his dignity. We need that will. Harold! Linda's voice crackled through the phone. Without it, everything falls apart. I know, Harold said, his voice low but steady. And I'm going to get it. We'll end this tomorrow. The final day was approaching, and with it, Harold's determination only grew. He wasn't going to let them take what was rightfully his. This time, he was going to win, not just for himself, but for everything he had built, and for everything he had sacrificed. The courtroom was cold the next morning as Harold, Linda, and Gregory prepared for the trial's final phase. The weight of the moment was palpable. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about reclaiming his dignity and legacy. He was ready. The tension in the air was thick as Rebecca and Dylan entered the courtroom, their faces filled with anxiety. But this time, the tables had turned. Harold had the upper hand, and he wasn't going to let them walk all over him any longer. When the time came, Linda presented the second will in court. The room fell silent as the truth was revealed. Rebecca and Dylan's faces went pale as they realized what had just happened. Their manipulation had been exposed, and there was no way to deny it. "This is the true will," Linda said, holding up the document for all to see. "And it clearly states Harold's wishes," the judge nodded solemnly. "This changes everything. The court will now adjourn for deliberation." The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the jury filed out. Harold sat there, his heart pounding in his chest. The weight of the moment had hit him. This was it, the moment when everything he had fought for would be decided. He had exposed the truth. But would the judge rule in his favor? Hours passed before the court reconvened. When the judge finally returned, the verdict was clear. "The court rules in favor of Harold Finch," he announced. "The will stands, and all assets are to be returned to him." Harold sat back in his seat, the wave of relief crashing over him. He had won. The years of sacrifice, the emotional toll, the deceit, all of it had led to this moment. He had fought for his dignity, and now he had it back. His family's betrayal had been fully exposed, and justice had been served. The judge's words echoed in Harold's mind. "It's over," he thought. "I've won." As Harold left the courthouse, a sense of peace settled over him. The storm had passed, and he was finally free. His legacy was intact, and his dignity had been restored. He walked out into the late afternoon sunlight, the weight of the battle finally lifting from his shoulders. But as he stepped outside, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. An unexpected number was calling. It was Gregory Shaw. "Harold, I've got something you need to hear," Gregory said, his voice urgent. "Something that changes everything." The story wasn't over yet, and Harold knew that. No matter what came next, he was ready to face it. Harold walked into the courtroom, his steps slow but purposeful. The tension in the air was palpable as he made his way to the front, his hands trembling ever so slightly. Today would decide the rest of his life. He had fought for everything, his dignity, his legacy, his family's respect. Now, it all came down to this moment. The years of betrayal, the heartbreak, and the grueling fight for justice had led him here. As he sat down, his mind raced through everything that had brought him to this point. The court had been a battleground, but today, he felt more than just the weight of the legal documents in front of him. He felt the weight of a lifetime's worth of sacrifices. "What have I done?" Harold thought. "Have I done enough? Can I really take back what's mine?" His internal turmoil was interrupted when the judge walked into the room. The final verdict was about to be delivered. Harold steadied his breath, preparing himself for what was coming. The room went silent as the judge cleared his throat. Every eye in the room was on him, including the stunned faces of Rebecca and Dylan. They sat in disbelief, their earlier arrogance replaced by uncertainty. "Based on the newly discovered will, this court rules in favor of Harold Finch," the judge announced. For a moment, the words didn't register in Harold's mind. It was like time had slowed down. "It's done," he thought, as the reality of the victory began to sink in. "I've won." He glanced at the faces of Rebecca and Dylan, who sat frozen, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The courtroom was still, the gravity of the moment settling in. For the first time in a long time, Harold felt the weight of the victory. The tension between Harold, Rebecca, and Dylan was thick as they left the courtroom. There were no more pretenses, no more lies. Harold stood tall, his head held high as he faced the very people who had betrayed him. He had fought for this moment, and now it was time to reclaim what was his. "You thought I wouldn't fight back, didn't you?" Harold said, his voice steady with controlled anger. "You thought you could take everything from me." Rebecca, her voice quivering, tried to justify her actions. "You don't understand, Dad. We only wanted what was ours." Dylan sneered, the mask of arrogance still on his face. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." Harold met their eyes, his anger tempered by the overwhelming satisfaction of victory. "You've already lost. This is more than money. It's about respect. And I've taken it back." As they walked away, Harold's resolve grew even stronger. This was about more than just the family estate. This was about standing up for himself, for his dignity, and for everything he had worked for. Harold returned home that evening, feeling the weight of the day's events. He sat alone in his study, the silence around him suffocating. The victory had come at a cost. He had exposed the truth, but the emotional toll of betrayal still lingered in his heart. What was it all for? Harold wondered. My legacy, my family, and now they're gone. The house was quiet, save for the soft ticking of a clock. Harold's mind wandered back to the years he had spent building his life, only to watch it crumble before him. But despite the pain, there was something else, a sense of peace that had been missing for so long. He had fought for what was rightfully his, and he had won. As he sat there, lost in thought, a knock on the door broke the silence. Gregory Shaw, his old friend, had come to visit. Gregory had been by his side throughout this ordeal, offering unwavering support. "This is just the start, Harold," Gregory said, a reassuring smile on his face. "You've fought for what's yours. Now, it's time to live for yourself." Harold nodded slowly, realizing that, while the family was gone, there was still a chance for him to rebuild. He had won the legal battle, but the real fight, his fight for freedom, was just beginning. The next few weeks passed in a blur as Harold made decisions that would change the course of his life. He decided to sell the family estate, severing the ties to his past. It was time to move forward, to reclaim the life that had been stolen from him. As Harold embarked on this new chapter, he felt a sense of liberation that he hadn't experienced in years. He traveled to new places, reconnected with old friends, and started to live for himself. For the first time, Harold felt free, sitting in a small, cozy house overlooking a peaceful landscape. Harold finally found the peace he had been searching for. The bitterness of the past had faded, replaced by a quiet contentment. "This is my legacy now," Harold thought. "Not the house, not the money, but my freedom." The battle for his family's estate was over, but Harold knew that this was just the beginning. His life, his future, was his to shape. And as the sun set over the horizon, Harold looked forward to the new opportunities that lay ahead. The phone rang suddenly, interrupting his thoughts. Harold hesitated before answering. It was a number he didn't recognize. When he picked up the phone, a familiar voice spoke. "Harold, it's Gregory. I've got something you need to hear." The conversation would change everything. The morning light streamed softly through the windows, painting the room in gentle shades of gold. Harold sat in his new home, a place that felt unfamiliar but peaceful. It had been a long road, full of legal battles and family strife, but now he finally felt at ease. The storm had passed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he could breathe without the weight of his past bearing down on him. As he sat in the quiet of his living room, Harold's thoughts drifted to everything he had been through, the betrayals, the heartache, the long nights spent fighting for his dignity. He had won, but the victory wasn't what he had expected. It wasn't the house or the money that mattered anymore. "It's over," he thought to himself. "The battle was tough, but now I've found what truly matters." Harold smiled softly, taking a deep breath. For the first time, he felt truly free. The weight of the past had been lifted. He could finally look ahead, unburdened by the years of resentment and loss. The future, for the first time, felt full of promise. A few hours later, Harold sat in his living room, his fingers hesitating over the phone as he dialed Gregory Shaw's number. He hadn't spoken to him in a while, but Gregory had been his rock through everything. As the phone rang, Harold wondered if he could truly reconcile with his family. It seemed impossible, but Gregory's voice, full of reassurance, brought comfort. "You've fought so hard, Harold," Gregory said, his tone calm. "Now it's time to heal. Maybe you'll find a way back to them." Harold sat quietly, considering Gregory's words. The thought of rebuilding what had been lost felt daunting, but Gregory was right. It wasn't too late. "I don't know. Greg, too much has happened." Gregory's voice softened. "The past can't be erased, but the future, Harold, That's still up to you. Harold felt a spark of hope. Maybe it wasn't too late to fix the broken parts of his life. Maybe there was still a chance for reconciliation, not just with his family, but with himself. That afternoon, Harold sat at his desk, his hands trembling slightly as he wrote a letter to Rebecca. He hadn't spoken to her in months, but the desire for healing had finally overcome the anger and bitterness. He poured his heart out, acknowledging his mistakes but also asking for understanding. Rebecca, I know I've hurt you, and I've made mistakes, but I've learned that nothing is more important than family. I hope you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. As he sealed the envelope, Harold felt a weight lift from his chest. He wasn't sure what Rebecca's response would be, but he knew that this was the first step toward healing, toward letting go of the past. Hours later, Harold was sitting in his living room, lost in thought, when the phone rang. It was Rebecca. Her voice, usually so guarded, now trembled with emotion. "Dad," she said, "I've been thinking. Maybe it's time we finally talk. I'm not sure where we go from here, but I'm willing to try." Harold felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had opened the door, and she was willing to walk through it. "That's all I've ever wanted, Rebecca," he said, his voice filled with both hope and uncertainty. They made plans to meet, both tentative and unsure of what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long while, Harold felt a sense of cautious optimism. The next day, Harold and Rebecca met at a small cafe, their first meeting in months. The tension was thick at first, both unsure how to bridge the gap that had widened between them. They began to talk, slowly, at first about the years of misunderstandings, the anger that had built up. "I've missed you so much, Rebecca," Harold said quietly. "I don't want to be the father I used to be. I want to be better for you." Rebecca's eyes welled up. "I've missed you too, Dad. Maybe we can start fresh." The words felt like a balm to Harold's wounded heart. He realized that while the scars would remain, there was hope. The road to full reconciliation would be long, but it was a road he was now willing to travel. Later that evening, as Harold stood in his new home, the sunset painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, he reflected on everything he had been through, from the painful betrayals to the hard-won victory. Harold had come to understand what truly mattered in life. The family he had once fought for was no longer what defined him. He had regained his dignity, his peace, and now the future was his to shape. The battle for his legacy was over, but the real journey, one of healing and rebuilding, had just begun. "The past will always be a part of me," Harold thought as he gazed at the sunset, "but it doesn't define me anymore. I've made peace with it. I'm finally free." As he smiled, ready for whatever the future held, a text message buzzed in his pocket. The message was from an unexpected source, someone he hadn't heard from in years. The future, it seemed, still had more surprises in store. The courtroom was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Harold sat at the plaintiff's table, his back straight, his hands resting on the table, palms up. He had been through so much to get here, and now, this final hearing would determine everything. It was the moment of reckoning. Finally, he would see the truth come to light. His mind raced with the years of betrayal, the lies, and the manipulation from those he had loved most. But today, it was different. Today, he had control. His lawyer, Linda Green, sat beside him, flipping through papers and glancing at Harold with silent support. Across from them sat Rebecca and Dylan, their faces tense, their eyes shifting uncomfortably. They knew what was coming. The final blow. The evidence against Dylan was undeniable. It wasn't just about the family estate anymore. It was about Harold's legacy, his dignity. The stakes had never been higher. "This is the moment I've waited for," Harold thought, staring straight ahead, focusing on the judge who sat in front of him. The judge hadn't said much yet, but the weight of the years was in the air. "They will see the truth. No more lies." The judge leaned forward, ready to give his final ruling, Just as the judge was about to speak, Linda stood up abruptly, her hand holding a small recorder. The courtroom fell silent as she inserted the device into the recorder. "This recording proves everything, Your Honor," Linda said calmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Dylan Harper's betrayal is undeniable." The courtroom erupted in a mix of gasps and murmurs as the recording began. Dylan's voice rang out, clear and damning, confessing his manipulative schemes to steal Harold's estate. He had been behind it all, orchestrating the entire plot. Rebecca's face drained of color as the truth unraveled before her. She hadn't known about the recording, and now, the betrayal she had been complicit in was out in the open. Dylan, caught in his lies, froze, his mouth opening and closing, but no words coming out. This is impossible," Dylan stammered, trying to regain control. Harold's heart pounded in his chest, but he stayed calm, feeling a surge of relief and triumph. Finally, the truth was out, and there was no turning back for them now. The judge raised his hand, signaling for order as he called for a short recess. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief, and Harold couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. This wasn't just about the money, it was about everything he had lost, and now it was his turn to win. After the recess, the judge returned, and Harold's mind focused once more on the proceedings. He had waited years for this moment, the moment when the truth was on his side. The judge's voice rang out, clear and resolute. "Based on the newly discovered evidence, this court rules in favor of Harold Finch. All claims by Dylan Harper are hereby dismissed, and Harold Finch regains full control of his estate." Harold could hardly believe the words as they settled in his mind. The victory wasn't about the property. It was about dignity. It was about justice. He had finally been heard. And for the first time in years, he felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. "This is the justice I've waited for," Harold thought to himself, his chest swelling with pride. "Not just for me, but for my family's future." As he walked out of the courtroom, the faces of Rebecca and Dylan burned into his memory. He had won, but the damage was done. He had avenged himself. But the relationship with his daughter and son-in-law was irreparably fractured. Later that afternoon, Harold sat alone on a quiet park bench, looking out at the peaceful landscape. The court battle was over, but the emotional scars would take longer to heal. As much as he wanted to find peace with Rebecca, the years of betrayal were not easily forgotten. Rebecca approached, hesitating for a moment before sitting beside him. She looked different, vulnerable. For the first time, she seemed to see the gravity of what she had done. "I was blinded by love for Dylan," Rebecca admitted, her voice soft and filled with regret. "But I see now that I was wrong. Can we start over, Dad?" Harold looked at her, his heart torn. The years of anger and hurt were still fresh, but in this moment, he saw a glimmer of hope. "It's never too late to rebuild. Rebecca," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "We've both made mistakes, but now we have a chance." As the sun began to set, Harold sat in his new home, reflecting on everything that had brought him here. The courtroom victory had been hard won, but now, sitting quietly in his study, Harold realized that the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the lessons he had learned, the dignity he had reclaimed, and the possibility of new beginnings. "The past will always be a part of me," Harold thought as he gazed out the window, watching the sky turn from pink to purple. "But it no longer defines me. I've earned my peace." He smiled, feeling a sense of freedom he hadn't known in years. The fight for his legacy had been a hard one, but now he could look to the future with a clear heart. As Harold stood at the window, ready for whatever came next, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unexpected source, a person from his past, reaching out with an offer that could change everything. For the first time in a long while, Harold was ready to face whatever came next.